Everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I am delighted to be talking with comics creator Rich Woodall. Rich, thank you for jumping in, joining, and bringing the long boxes.
Thanks. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I've got plenty of long boxes for sure.
Yeah, yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure to have you on. I usually start by mentioning a couple of titles. Your work goes back to Dark Horse Presents. You have TMNT, The Last Ronin, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing this, but
Kyrra.
Kyrra,
But yeah,
Kyrra.
it's
Okay.
okay. Everybody does, and my wife gets very upset about that. She named her, so she's very protective.
I will now, from now on, henceforth, Kyrra, it shall be.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So those are just a couple of the titles, and we can certainly mention others, but
Sure.
curious about how you decided comics were the space that you wanted to create in.
Yeah, I mean I started really, really young. I was 13 when I bought the comic that really started it all. And that was Classic X-Men 13 or 17. And after I bought that issue, I just knew like this is what I want to do with my life. I didn't know anything about it. Like I didn't know how to get into it. I didn't know anything. Lived in a little town in Arkansas and but I knew I wanted to draw comics and I started making my I had a friend who lived in the town with me and we did our own little 8.5 by 11 comics that
Mhm.
we both drew on the same page and we both wrote it out and everything and yeah, that was really the beginning of it. And the older I got, the more reading Wizard magazine or Comics Journal, you would get insight into how these things are actually formed and put together and the whole process. And at this point I've done everything from the conceptualizing of comics to the publishing. I've done
Mhm.
the entire thing. So I'm pretty excited. I love every aspect of it, really.
That's cool. That is cool, and good to be flexible in your creating, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of it comes out of necessity. It's if I've got a stack of rejection letters from Marvel and DC,
Hmm.
and instead of just like letting that stop me, I'm gonna make my own comics until I bust that door down. And
Yeah.
I love doing my own stuff anyway. So it's one of those things my dad's a great storyteller.
Hmm.
And as a kid, like he would just tell me, he's always telling me stories, and I think I got a lot of how I tell stories and how I put together the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story, and making it an exciting tale. Some of that I get from him telling me stories, and my grandmother telling me stories. My grandmother was a great storyteller, and yeah, she would just make up things on the fly, telling, of course, putting me in the stories and stuff as a kid and everything. So yeah, I was surrounded by really good storytellers, and I think that bug just was kind of inside my DNA.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. That is cool. I love the family stories, and I mentioned a couple of your titles, but do you have a particular set of favorites or positive experiences that come to mind first?
Yeah, I mean, I've been professionally doing comics since 94. And one of the first books I did was one of my own books called Johnny Ray Gun. And
Hmm.
and that was kind of again, I wasn't being hired by Marvel or DC, and I loved all those the Jack Kirby characters, right? And so I have a friend, Matt Talbot, and we got together and we kind of had the same brain.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we kind of crafted that character to be everything we wanted to do at Marvel and DC. So if we wanted a story that had the Fantastic Four in it, we would just make up our own version of the Fantastic Four. It's very different, but it had some of the sensibilities, the family aspect, the kind of the science aspect of it. So Johnny Reagan will always be, one of my favorites, and more recently, The Electric Black, um, was a book that I did with my partner John Joe Schmalke,
Hmm.
and it's a totally different type book. Johnny Reagan's very happy superhero pop culture kind of thing, and Electric Black is horror and with a little Doctor Who mixed into it.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and I love that range too. I love the wide range of things that you can do in comics. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that with both of those books we really set out, maybe unintentionally, to have a world that we could kind of do anything we wanted in it,
Hmm.
with the
Hmm.
Johnny Ray Gun stuff, if we wanted to do horror, we could do horror. If we wanted to do comedy or romance, we could do that. And kind of same thing with the Electric Black. Like, we knew we wanted to tell horror themed stories,
Hmm.
but the genre could move all over the place. And Joe and I have very different loves of different types of horror. And he's really big into slashers and things like that. And I like the classic Universal monsters. So we kind of brought both of those things together in there.
Nice, nice. Now you mentioned Joe there. I'm curious about other collaborations that have been really meaningful in your journey so far.
Yeah, I have a lot of collaborations. Almost all my books are I only have a couple that I do on my own. Sergeant Werewolf and Johnny Reagan started on my own, and once I met Matt, we got together on that. But uh God's Brutality, I work with a guy named
Mm-hmm.
Mark Welzer. Um and then Kyrra Alien Jungle Girls with Craig Russo. And each one's very different. With Kyrra and Gods, I do the I do the writing on those, and
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
Gods I do coloring and lettering. Kyrra I did lettering. Um, so yeah, with each collaborator, you kind of have to feel them out as to how's best to work with these individuals. For instance, with Craig on Kyrra, he wanted full scripts, panel breakdowns, write out the dialogue and everything. And then with
Hmm.
Mark on God's Brutality, it was more the old Marvel method, where it was kind of like, instead of writing out panel by panel, it's here's a paragraph of what the page could be, and
Yeah.
and then Mark is open to interpret that, which that's the way I prefer to work myself, because it kind of gives me freedom to veer off a little bit on the page or whatever, but it gives you a path to go down.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. And that's a cool description of the Marvel method as well. I think you're the first guest that's kind of put it that way, which is it's really nice to hear. Um, so I have one more official question, and that
Sure.
is current projects, things that have your attention that you can talk about, as well as spaces where people can go to learn more.
Sure. I just wrapped up a Kickstarter for Gods of Brutality, so I'm in the middle of putting together the printed files and all that stuff for a trade paperback of that. Um, I've for future, like, coming up projects, I'm coloring all the Johnny Ray Gun stuff that I did 20 years ago now.
Hmm.
Or yeah, 15, 20 years ago. And so it had never been in color. So I'm coloring everything, and that'll be probably the next Kickstarter, maybe. I'm writing a book with another book with Mark Welzer called The Bloody Ring of Dracula,
Oh, nice,
which is
nice,
Dracula in Mexico in the 1800s as a lucha wrestler.
cool.
And it's just fun. I mean, Mark and I like to do just fun, crazy action stuff. And then I've got a book called Space Frankenstein is Angry that I'm slowly working on. There's a lot of there's a lot of irons in the fire. I'm about to do a pitch for Mad Cave with another set of writers. So yeah, there's always a lot of stuff going on, which is good.
Cool, cool. I'm hearing that Universal monster theme with Dracula and
Yeah.
Frankenstein, and I also really like what Matt Cave is doing right now, so curious to see how that shapes up as well.
They've got a lot of cool books. I'm really excited. And from what I understand from the creators that I know that work with them, they treat their creators really well, which is super important. Right now they pay them a page rate,
Yeah,
which is almost unheard of in the industry right now. Like unless you're working for one of the bigger guys, I think Dark Horse pays a page rate too. I'm sure maybe Boom and IDW do. But it's not as common as it should be.
yeah, yeah. Can absolutely agree with treating creators well. And Rich, I appreciate your time. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your work, and anything that we've missed in the talk through that you want to make sure to share before we close out, and I let you go back to looking through your long boxes.
No, thank you. No, I think we covered everything. And oh, you had mentioned where you can find me.
Hmm.
I'm on Facebook, Rich Woodall. I've got a little picture of a drawing of me, and I've got shorts on and stuff, which is what I always have on. So yeah, you can find me there. And then I've got a Patreon, which is like Patreon dot or slash Rich Woodall or something similar to that. You can probably find it.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Well, once more, thank you so much and glad to have you back anytime.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.